The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is...
John C. Myers.
And we are a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in horror franchises. And today we will be discussing Cult of Chucky from 2017. But first and most importantly, we have a special guest. He is a filmmaker most known for There's a Zombie Outside, the Boulet Brothers Dragula, the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, and he is the co-host of the Midnight Mass podcast. Welcome to the show, Michael Varrati.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here to join the cult, as it were.
And there's three of us.
That works.
We are the Cult of Chucky now. Yes.
Forget Don Mancini. It's just us.
Right, for sure. I've just been following you on social media for a while and watching, of course, the Boulet Brothers. And I've seen your Chainsaw Awards. And then I saw a couple of new bits of news about your career. And I thought, we need to have this guy on the show. And first and foremost, I'd like to know about Dead Mall from our friends at Dark Horse Comics.
Yes, Dead Mall. Ironically, maybe coincidentally, not ironically. It wouldn't be ironic that I was talking to the writer of Dead Mall since I'm adapting the comic book. But coincidentally, I was just talking to Adam Caesar about an hour ago about this very project. For folks who do not know, Dead Mall is a 4-issue limited horror comic book from Dark Horse Comics, and it was written by Adam Caesar, who a lot of folks would be aware of because he is the best-selling novelist of Clown in a Cornfield. Adam is someone I have been communicating with periodically off and on for a while, and we really only got to know each other in person last year at San Diego Comic-Con, but I feel like because of our social media engagement, and we've been messaging each other back and forth, and talking periodically. I had him in the Chainsaws last year, and we share mutual friends who I have known for a very long time. It feels like he's been in my life a lot longer than he actually has, and I really quite love the work that Adam does. Through a confluence of events and some shared producers, we were talking about Dead Mall, which is this very strange eldritch horror story set in an abandoned shopping mall, of which our country has many.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I've always been fascinated by the mall and mall culture. I worked at a mall when I was in my late teens and early 20s. So when I read Adam's comic that he wrote with art by David Stoll, I remember thinking he got this. I mean, he really got the vibe of what our attachment to the mall is, and that kind of weird haunting feeling that you get when you see an abandoned one. And I had not necessarily read the comic thinking I would one day want to adapt it into a movie, but I was talking to a colleague of mine and producer, Matt Mangiarides, on the phone one night. We were talking about something totally different, and somehow the conversation went in the direction of this. And I said, Adam Caesar wrote a comic book called Dead Mall. And Matt said, yeah. And he said, do you know Adam? I said, yeah. I said, we're friendly. We talk and we are very supportive and enthusiastic about each other's work. And I have always wanted to adapt one of his things. And on that call, Matt was like, well, if I message him, do you think that you would want to do this? And I said, well, if you message him, I know him well enough to know that I'm probably going to hear from him within the hour. And sure enough, Matt messaged Adam. Adam messaged me. And within that evening, Dead Mall started to come together as like, are we going to do this? Are we going to try and do this as a movie? And yeah, so that's just been where it's at. We're in the process of trying to get that together. It's being read right now by a studio. I have written a draft of it that Adam seems to like and that the producers seem to like. And I really am very excited because it's strange and it's the kind of story that I really get into. I love anybody who keeps up with any of the work I do. I love kitschy stuff, but I also like very unusual, mind-melty, mind-fuckery, maybe, if you will.
That's a genre.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really like about Dead Mall, Adam, I think, has described it as event horizon in a shopping mall. At least I think Adam was the one who described it as that.
Fantastic.
And I love that kind of one-to-one because it's this idea of hell in a commerce landscape. This place where, the mall is endless and so too is your torment. And I just think it's really great. And what I think is really funny is that in this new era of liminal horror with back rooms and Exit 8, the timing couldn't be better, because although Dead Mall has existed as a comic for a couple years, malls are, when you think about it, are strange and spooky. Like we don't consider them when they're populated being that.
Right.
But they're wide open corridor spaces that lead into a lot of pockets of things you cannot see and you aren't certain what's there.
Right.
And I just love the potential. So
yeah, and if you've worked at a mall, like especially after hours, like, you know, if you're closing down, it's big, it's empty, there's hardly anybody in there. Yeah, I worked at a Walden Books when I was a teenager, so I was there after hours in the mall. It's scary.
One of the things that I always try and explain to people, and I found it's not true of every mall, but the mall that I worked at, which was the Chapel Hill Mall in Akron, Ohio, we had the back corridors. And I don't know if your mall had this, where if you were working closing, obviously you would close the gates of the store entrance that customers would come in. So, you know, you still had to close up the store. You couldn't leave that way because it was already locked. There was always that sort of back door that the public didn't see. And then when you'd go back there are these weird, just concrete hallways that are sort of the veins of the mall. And when you're back there, that's how like closers and openers would come in. And I always remember thinking how weird it was, because the mall is so stylized and it's so Art Deco, and they want you to get this sense of like, everything's fun, you want to buy this. But when you're behind the scenes, it's just weird, cold hallways and steel metal doors. And sometimes someone would label the door. Otherwise, you would like you pass just a steel
just
door
wander.
And you'd be like, that's the Gap, maybe.
Yeah. Right. So what store did you work in the mall?
I worked at Hot Topic in the early days.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Like so many veterans of the horror scene.
Well, cool. I mean, I'm excited about that. We've talked to lots of people associated with Dark Horse, and so this is just kind of coincidental that we're having you on and that you're associated with the Dark Horse property. So that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel very excited about it. I'm a big comic book reader. I love comics. I actually am co-editing a comic book horror anthology that's forthcoming myself right now. And I've always had great admiration for the medium. I think that it is one of those things that, much like a lot of the movies that I watched growing up, there was a certain kind of adult who looked down their nose at it, but it made it all the more exciting. And then as our generation grew up, we made this disrespected art respectable. And so there's some really, really great comic book writers and comic book artists out there who I think are doing the thing in ways that we always needed and we always wanted. And I'm just so excited by what everyone's doing. And then people like Adam or Casey Gilly or David Booher, some of the artists and writers that I read and get to work with, I'm just always in awe of the stuff that they're putting to the page. And I have not gotten over the joy of going to a comic book store. So
do you find that, like, adapting a comic book, do you find that limiting in that, do you feel like you need to stay true to how the art appears on the page, or like to what's all on the page, or do you feel comfortable sort of veering outside of that a bit in the adaptive process?
It's interesting. I've adapted a book before, a biography. My Midnight Mass co-host and I, Peaches Christ, aka Joshua Grinnell, we co-wrote a script that is based on the true story of a drag artist named Doris Fish. And that's forthcoming as well. And we optioned through our producers a book called Who Does That Bitch Think She Is, which is about Doris's life. And that came with a particular set of challenges because it was a voluminous text of the whole of someone's life. And you find that sometimes when you are crafting a narrative based on real people, some of whom are still with us and can read and respond and say, hey, that's not how that happened. There are concessions and things that you have to really be mindful of, that you have to make for screen, versus the things that absolutely are ironclad that you have to keep because that's the truth and that's the facts. And I entered Dead Mall sort of with the experience of having done the Doris Fish project in mind, thinking that the adaptation process would be similar, but they're actually very different. And it was a learning curve for me because there are things that you really, really have to figure out when breaking down a whole book, like a biography, for example. Whereas a 4-issue comic, in a lot of ways, Adam did a lot of the legwork by creating this arc. 4 issues of a comic book is about the length of what a movie would be when you really think about it.
Right.
But you go in and you look at it and you think, okay, well, that visual is something I would love to preserve, or this character beat is something that I'd like to preserve, while also realizing things that work on a graphic page may not work on screen. So you're always sort of asking yourself, how do I navigate maintaining this thing that people love while making it work in a new medium? And so my biggest goal in adapting Dead Mall was to stay as true to the source material as possible, while knowing that that's not always plausible. But I did really love the art, and it influenced a lot as much as the writing did, because sometimes when I would look at a page and how I wanted to set up a sequence of events, it was kind of there. Like, it was storyboarded. Now, that's the thing that's really interesting about panels in a comic that a lot of people don't take into consideration as readers. But I remember talking to an editor once that in a screenplay, you get to describe an action in progress. Whereas if you're writing a comic book and it's limited pages, limited images, you have to sort of have action already happening. So instead of like runs and jumps, we start with Spider-Man's already mid-jump. And it's sort of this thing. So a lot of the times when I was taking something directly from the source material and trying to figure out how that applied to the world of the movie and the script, I got to fill in the blanks. Where it's like in Dead Mall, if we saw the kids running from a monster, it's like, well, when did the run start? Where did they first see the monster? What was the jump scare that led to that?
Yeah,
and so
that makes
was
sense.
Kind of the fun thing. So when I sent the first draft back to Adam, I said to him, I was like, you'll find that some of this is exactly what you wrote, because, why mess with it? Whereas I filled in a lot of space and I added some things. So it was really interesting. I was really guided by the writing, while also given a lot of leeway to add stuff as well.
And since you know him and already have a good relationship, he'll know that you're doing this in good faith, altering and changing and adding and stuff like that.
He hasn't tried to beat me up yet. So.
Not yet. Right. Well, cool. What is your kind of history with the Child's Play franchise, and what made you choose Cult of Chucky?
Well, it's interesting, right? I think that if you grew up at a certain point in time, Child's Play hit like lightning, right? I was definitely too young when Child's Play came out in '88, but I was old enough to know to be terrified.
Yeah.
Because I remember My Buddy commercials, the dolls that were inspiration for Chucky. And so that was my consciousness of what this kind of doll was before Child's Play happened. And now on television, there are these trailers for this movie coming where that doll that I see on Saturday mornings during cartoons is killing people. And so it scared the hell out of me. And so my initial kind of reaction to Child's Play was absolute terror. And so I think I probably did stay away from it for a little bit. But Chucky also became very omnipresent very fast in culture. And I'm not really sure when I cycled back around, but I would almost say definitively that it had to have been Bride of Chucky was what kind of pulled me back in. I may have seen 2 and 3 on video with friends or whatever, but at that point in the 90s when Bride of Chucky hit, and what Don did with that script was he took a horror property that had become so part of the zeitgeist and flipped it a little bit. He made fun of it. Like, it wasn't quite the lambast that Seed would be later, but the train had left the station. And what I thought was really great is it was knowingly fun, it was knowingly camp, it was knowingly kitsch while maintaining the tone, which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
It was also really impressive because by this point, Halloween had already rebooted multiple times. By this point, there were segments of Nightmare on Elm Street and sequels of Nightmare on Elm Street that the main franchise was just not acknowledging. Same with Friday the 13th. Same with Hellraiser. Every franchise like rebooted, restarted, ignored, etc. But Don Mancini with Child's Play said, no, as I grow, my franchise grows and it's all canon.
Yeah.
And Bride was really the first time we started seeing him kind of say, it's all real and it's all part of it. And the idea that it could have started with this like very intense horror movie, but now we've got this camp moment with Jennifer Tilly as the bride of Chucky, and everything that came before did come before. And now we're here and we're going to keep growing. I remember thinking how genius it was, and I loved it. And of course, how could you not love Jennifer Tilly? Like her entrance into this franchise was the game changer, I think. I mean, love Brad Dourif as Chucky, undeniably an icon. But I think that she contradicts the idea that adding new characters late into an established franchise is a death knell. It's not if you do it right. She is not the cousin Oliver of the Brady Bunch here.
Right.
She is the thing that I think kind of got a whole new generation into it. And I remember just being on board from that point. I loved Seed of Chucky. I know it's hotly debated, but it is a movie that I enjoy. I love that John Waters was in it, and I love that John Waters keeps coming back.
Yes.
And then, at some point, my own life and career as a creative in the world of horror started intersecting. And I had met Alex Vincent a long time ago at a convention in passing. Like, I don't really know him, but he was one of the first people I just met at conventions while doing conventions. I remember he was very nice. And one of the things I really was very interested in early on was the intersection of queer identity and horror. And so from the earliest writings that I did, from the earliest work that I've done, a lot of the stuff that I do with different platforms, it's something I talk about. I've been hosting a panel about queer horror at San Diego Comic-Con for over 15 years. And invariably, if you have those discussions, Don Mancini's name is going to enter the chat. And so at a certain point, I don't even remember where and when, I was just introduced to Don Mancini. Like we crossed paths socially. And of course, I'm sure the first time I met him, I'm like, oh my God.
Absolutely.
I now see Don periodically, and I always love seeing him. When Cult of Chucky came out, he had I don't know if it was a premiere or like a friends and family screening or a cast and crew screening or something, but he did a invite screening here in Los Angeles and invited a bunch of people that he knew, and I was invited. And so for me, having a trajectory with these movies, going from the kid who was scared of the film trailer that I saw to like the Jennifer Tilly movie that I was obsessed with as a teen to now being invited to the filmmaker's personal screening of his latest movie, Cult will always sit in a very special place for me because that was the one that he's just like, hey, you're invited.
You're in.
Here's a picture of you and Chucky in the lobby. And then, sitting back here is, Heather Langenkamp. And over there is Jeff Reddick. And like, you were just invited into this room. And I just will always hold that very special. And I'm very grateful to Don for inviting me to that event.
What did you think of the kind of after Seed? And we loved Seed. We're fully on board. But then definitely like the change into Curse. What did you think when Curse came out? Was that kind of like a whiplash to you? Did you want more Seed, or were you cool with it just being like, okay, we know what we're doing here, like going back to like a more straight ahead horror gothic suspense?
That's a great question. I think that one of the great joys of this franchise, especially considering that it's all canon, is that he has found a way to play with subgenre in a way that very few franchises and filmmakers and film creatives can. I don't think that you could suddenly do a farcical Friday the 13th the way that they did Seed, because Jason doesn't work that way. But Chucky does. I think that Chucky also is really scary. So you can have these moments where Chucky is at Jennifer Tilly's house as Jennifer Tilly.
Yes.
And it makes sense. And then he turns around and is in Curse of Chucky, where it's horrifying. And what I really, really like about the pause between Seed and Curse is when we got Curse, I think before we knew, there was sort of a sense was like, is this like a soft reboot? Like, what are we doing? And then with kind of the stinger with Alex Vincent and all the stuff that happens in the movie, you realize he gave For a New Generation a fresh entry point while also maintaining the truth of everything that came before. And it was so smart because I think that Curse it's a closed house movie. It's a woman in a wheelchair and a killer doll and no one believes her. It's a gothic horror movie. It's whatever happened to Baby Jane.
Right.
It's scary. And I think the 1-2 punch of Curse and Cult is really great because they tonally are very similar, but Curse is the reintroduction, and then Cult at the beginning, I think the first act and a half of Cult maintains the tone of Curse where it's dire, it's dark. But by the end of this movie, it's sort of like them saying, don't you forget who Chucky is.
Right.
And yeah, and I think that that's what I really liked about this is my partner watched the movie with me last night in preparation for this interview. He hadn't seen it. And I think that he was kind of like, okay, all right. And then when the multiple Chuckies started showing up, he was like, oh shit, this is crazy. Yeah. And I was like, it is crazy. And what was great was at the end, and I know like I'm getting very ahead, but I love that kind of freight train towards the finale of this movie because at the time we didn't know there was going to be a TV show.
Sure.
So
right.
As far as we were concerned, when those credits rolled, it was like, that's it. That's the end of the Child's Play movies because they at the time had said there weren't going to be any movies. And it's like she are leaving together. What the hell is going on?
Totally.
Well, that is something that we've come up against a lot in doing these longer series is that particularly in something like Friday the 13th or definitely in Hellraiser, where it stops feeling like it feels like another movie, but we're just throwing Jason in there. Like we're trying to do something fresh with these characters, whatever, but it just doesn't feel like true to the whole thing. And I think Mancini, because he's a part of the whole, he's seen this all the way through, is able to navigate that. And like you said, I think just the nature of Chucky, you can say like, okay, what if Chucky was in a gothic horror? What if Chucky was in a mental institution movie, horror movie, and still is able to do that, but make it feel a part of the whole thing? I love these movies. I did not think I would be on board with them as much as I am, but it's quite impressive.
Also, the fact that Don has been a part of it since the very beginning to me is like, there could be one that he makes down the line. Let's say he makes 4 more that doesn't quite click for me for some reason. And I'd be like, yeah, but Don, he can do whatever he wants. Like, of course, like he has the license and the runway to go wherever he wants, whether or not it clicks for me or not. But so far they all have. So
yeah. And it's really remarkable when you think about it, when you think about especially how film contracts are. The fact that he, as a young 20-something, maintained in some semblance the rights to this character enough to be attached forever. I mean, the only Child's Play movie that has nothing to do with the core chronology is the remake. And that's considerable. Wes Craven was out of Nightmare on Elm Street by the second movie. He came back for the third one, but almost immediately the ties were severed. Sean Cunningham kind of bows out of Friday the 13th pretty quickly. After part 2, Clive Barker is somewhere else while Hellraiser is happening. But Don has been front and center and maintained creative control to some degree the whole time, which is remarkable. Yeah. It hasn't happened really before or since for a franchise of this magnitude. And so it's one of those things, especially now having the opportunity to be social with him from time to time, you don't realize how crazy it is for one person to have that control until you're out like in the world where like, I'll see Don at an event, be like, hey, catching up. How are you? What have you seen recently? Blah, blah, blah. And then you're like walking somewhere and there's a kid wearing a Chucky t-shirt, or you're at a theme park and they're selling Chucky dolls. And you're like, I know that guy. And that guy got like, money
right, for sure. Yeah, we've been saying that the only one on a little bit of a lesser level, obviously not quite in the culture as much, but Don Coscarelli with Phantasm, like they stuck with it through 5. And, even if every single one of those are a little bit different, like I still love that Don and Reggie and all of them were like kind of together for 40 years, you know, making those movies.
Yeah.
So
God, I love Phantasm.
absolutely. Yeah. We're big Phantasm foreheads over here. Foreheads, but yeah.
Well, mine is shiny. Yeah.
But that like, just the fact that Don has been with it the entire time makes me just say, like, I will follow you wherever. I hope he gets to make the Chucky on a Train movie that he's been mentioning. Like, throw in a murder mystery on a train. That sounds wonderful. But getting back to Cult, you know, you're right. The tone of this is very similar to the previous movie. In that first act, the photography is similar, although I do love that we're looking at blinding white light this time. Same DP, also shot in Winnipeg, I believe. So I really love this one where he's just like, no, we're going to turn all the lights up and blind you that way instead of blinding darkness. And it feels cold and clinical and mean too, in a great way.
Yeah, it's a different kind of horror, right? I always think about the fear that you can see. I think that it is obvious to have a fear of the dark, and that's where a lot of horror plays. But I think horror that plays out in brightness is its own sort of thing. And he definitely did it here because it's not just the white light. It's that sterile medical white light. And hospitals are scary. Medical institutions are scary.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, also all the allusions to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. What with Brad Dourif being present, it's all really smart.
He does have the line that I love so much.
Jesus, fucking cuckoo's nest.
Which is obviously the homage, but to me, his delivery, I love it when Chucky and Brad Dourif are frustrated and pissed off. He's like, God, now I got to come back and kill you too, or something like that is his attitude.
He is one of the most vexed horror slashers. I love the scene when he's talking to the woman who thinks she's a ghost. And, you know, he's just walking by and he's like, now I have to deal with this one. You know?
For sure. Right. All the secondary characters are fun in this. I can't remember all their names off the top of my head. Madeline, who's the mother, I believe, who suffocated her child. What a great dark idea to bring in to have Chucky be a part of as well.
Yeah.
Man, that was fantastic.
Super dark.
Yeah. She was great. Claire, I really enjoyed her. And Angela, like you mentioned, she thinks she's a ghost. She's very schizophrenic. And I like the reveal because she has a line about Chucky calling her on the phone. And then it's revealed that actually happened. Right. And I would love to hear that conversation so much. But I'm glad we don't.
Well, the other thing, though, that I do love about that is it's sort of unclear, like how did she get a phone call?
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did she? I mean, I assume so. You know, there's multiple layers of did she or did she not? I suppose with Chucky being a part of it. But yeah, the setting is perfect. I love the snow outside, and of course the snow being involved in that one big giant set piece kill of the glass coming through and then turning into snow. I mean, give me that Don Mancini operatic feel. The
amazing.
Everything pushed up to 11 with him sometimes, and I love that.
Well, I enjoyed that one because it's very similar to the one that Tiffany does in
Bride.
Yeah. So I was getting Bride and Seed confused there. In Bride, but it's like Chucky's kind of like, boy, I'm great that I did that I came up with that idea. But he can't give anything to Tiffany.
Right. And I'm sure that took just days and days and to set and reset. And as always, we always hope that the actor got to keep their molded head afterwards and take it home.
I think about, it's funny. I know actors who got to keep their head mold, and then others, I don't know, maybe they don't want it. So
there is no way that you could pry it from my hands getting offset if I had that opportunity.
Also, I also couldn't help but think for a character like Claire, like you just got to dress in them like the most comfortable outfit the entire shoot. Yeah. That's kind of nice.
Right.
Yeah. I was thinking about the character of Malcolm, the multiple Malcolm who has the different personalities. He's in jammy pants this whole movie.
Oh, yes.
And
I was just like give me that wardrobe
Right.
choice.
And the hoodie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or does he just put on the hoodie when he becomes Mark Zuckerberg? I can't remember.
No, he's wearing it most of the
whole
time, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a part of the sequence that I really love where she's looking out the window and they do the split screen. I enjoyed his employment of the split screen and that kind of thing this time around because it did make it feel like almost like a 60s suspense, like a Hitchcock or something like that.
De Palma, yeah. And like we've talked about in previous episodes that like he will not necessarily wear his influences on his sleeve, but he's not afraid of letting you know that he's doing this. But not in this like winky, aren't I so clever kind of way. It's just, I love this. I was inspired by this. I want to do this. And I think that helps make it more cohesive and more a singular voice of his versus just a pastiche of references.
Yeah.
And I think it was in the doc of Chuck that I watched the segment for. There is a sequence where the camera is going over the various rooms in the facility. And he called out that he was just like, oh, I just wanted to do an homage to Snake Eyes. I was like, heck yeah. Love that. Absolutely. But this also shows the return of Andy in a larger role. What did we think of Andy coming back? I was glad to have him just in the sense of bring back the canon. And that was fun. And I did enjoy the idea of him being like, survivalist isn't quite the right word, but that man is stocked full of weapons. That's for sure. And I did not see the idea of him torturing the Chucky face. That was an early on, like, great little moment for me.
Yeah, I really love the inclusion of Andy in this. I think it's exactly what we're talking about. We know cumulatively every one of the movies is linked, but to finally decades later bring back the kid, like, and show that he was scarred by this. And I think that that's really smart. It's really dark. You feel for him. The fact that he has the Chucky head from what would I assume be the original franchise in the Vice, because it's got the stitches, it's got all the stuff. It's really kind of good connective tissue.
Yeah, I'm always a fan of that. I mean, like Chucky said, he stole his childhood. And so like to have Andy come back and be like, no, I'm fine. I get sad sometimes wouldn't really work. So to have him be this kind of, he's got this quiet violence that just is broiling inside of him because like all his torture stuff is all very neatly laid out, like serial killer like, but it's all just focused at Chucky. And I enjoyed that take on him a lot. It's kind of the same thing with to some extent like Jamie Lee Curtis in the more recent Halloween ones, how they made her that she looked evil in the face and is like, well, I can't possibly be normal now. That's gone.
Yeah.
Poor Andy can't go out on a date without somebody Googling him at this point, too. So
I love that line of you've got a very dark past, which is something that most people want to hear on a date. But
right. Was their date seemingly was like in a Space Needle or something?
Yeah, that was my first
It's in a
thought.
big skyscraper. Yeah.
Yeah. Don loves his very, very tall buildings, it seems like. But yeah, I was glad that they put in the scene of Andy talking to Tiffany because that felt like such great connective tissues over the two. I don't want to separate the franchise necessarily, but it was a nice marriage of the old half and the new half. Even if it is a phone call, I was glad that they were able to kind of get along with each other or talk to each other a bit. Yeah,
it's that interweaving of the different elements of this franchise. Like Jennifer Tilly showing up should be like Cesar Romero's Joker showing up in a Nolan Batman or something like that. Like it still works. Yeah. It's still like that she's just this weird force of chaos, but it's a talking doll, so it all kind of really it all makes sense.
Only one that is sort of unaccounted for in Curse and Cult is Glenn. But I know that as we go forward into the story, at some point we get the return of that character. So
just for the sake of tracing back, this is not a CinemaSins thing, but like at this point, Tiffany is, I mean, they refer to her as Tiffany. You look just like Jennifer Tilly. Through all the meta of the last few movies, Tiffany. The walking Jennifer Tilly is now possessed by the Tiffany doll, correct?
Yes.
Which was also Jennifer Tilly at one point previous. But I do love how they,
as far as we know,
but I do love how they sort of hand wave that at this point, because it's just like, we don't need to be brought up to speed. I just wanted to like check my own notes there for a second after the previous few. But yeah, this was a first time watch for me, so I didn't know that Jennifer Tilly was back in this movie, and I hooted and hollered as soon as she got on screen, of course. Looking amazing as always.
Yes. I mean, she is truly the garnish on an already fine meal. I think they knew when to use her. It doesn't feel like a cheat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have seen those horror cameos where somebody enters for a split second. You're like, oh, okay, it was cool. They were there. She is significant to the story, but she's used in a sparing way that I think her appearances really work. I think they really do.
And I do love how much ownership she's taken over the franchise as a whole. I think in an interview I watched with her for Curse, they were talking about the casting of Fiona Dourif, and Jennifer Tilly said, we thought that the casting of her was going to be great. And I was like, oh, you're barely in that movie, but I love how integral you are of the whole like Chucky family at this point, which I'm sure, you know, Don was discussing with her the entire time, just as a friend, you know, and how important she is to the franchise going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we think of the the new wrinkle that that Chucky was able to read online in this voodoo spell, that he could throw himself into multiple dolls at the same time? I love this kind of crap. I mean, I was cool with it.
That is the full circle that we were talking about. This franchise's ability to walk between subgenres, because that Voodoo for Dummies website, of course, is a callback to Tiffany reading the Voodoo for Dummies book in Bride of Chucky. So, of course, with the march of time, it would now be online. But the fact that Bride of Chucky is so tonally different from Cult of Chucky, that joke shouldn't work. But because of the heavy work and lifting all of these characters have done to make it all cohesive in this much more serious mental hospital story,
right?
That when Chucky says that, we're like, oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
totally.
That's right.
It's fine. I don't need much more explanation than that. And for me, if you're giving me more Brad Dourif, that's all I need then. So he gets to do 3 slightly different performances for his new 3 dolls.
Yeah, well, I was always kind of wondering about this with, I think it's 3 that starts out where, it would have been 3, because when the factory picks up the melted husk of Chucky and drips the blood into the mix, only like 1 doll comes out. But, you know, how much blood does it take to make a Chucky? And so being able to have these sort of multiple dolls, I think builds on that. They keep it interesting enough. Like they could rascal around. They could become like little critters, something like that. But as friend of the show, Tom points out, they're more psychologically rascaling around
Yes.
in that they're just doing a lot of damage to people emotionally, and also with drills.
Yeah. And with drills.
But I like how they're all slightly different, but there's not, at least not yet anyway, there's not the whole like, well, I'm the original. No, I'm the one in charge. That it's just, they kind of go like, no, we're all part of this. We're all a unified hive mind.
Yeah.
Let's go kill Fiona Dourif.
Yeah, the only thing that they seem to butt heads with briefly is who got to kill Andy.
Right.
But then I love how they just decided right away, like, oh no, you've had a rough day, man. Like you go fuck him up, which is such a great line.
You got the bad haircut.
No, I love seeing those 3, and I really enjoyed in some of the behind the scenes interviews, everybody kept referring to that as Scene 74, which made me just realize that like every department was probably like, oh God, Scene 74 is coming up. Like, so what are we going to do to make this work? And all the puppeteers were like, of course, I was just worried about the amount of time that we were going to have. And Brad Dourif said, yeah, Scene 74. Like, I knew that I would have to work on different voices. And then Don Mancini is like, yeah, Scene 74. Like, I can't wait to get to that one. I just enjoy the idea that multiple ideas or memos were sent around between departments with like Scene 74 and red flags. Like, this is what we're all rushing towards and preparing for. But I mean, they did a phenomenal job bringing all 3 of those guys to life over poor Carlos.
Yeah, there's a lot more, much like Curse, a lot more digital effects like green screening, cropping people out or whatever. And I was particularly curious about the shot of the sort of Messiah of Evil shot of Chucky emerging from the blurry background and just how that's done. Because just in my own experience doing that stuff, when it's at all out of focus, it becomes really, really annoying.
Yeah.
But obviously they know what they're doing. But yeah, it's my understanding that scene was shot all just like, it's the wide shots, that it was one at a time, that they didn't have enough to do all 3 at once. I think it works really well.
Yeah, Carlos had to get killed 3 times in a row, and then all 3 Chuckies getting comped, you know.
Yes.
He had to do an old share. Well, I don't want to spoil Twin Peaks, but he had to do the the murder scene multiple times.
Right.
But yeah, I that was a high point of the movie for me by far. Just watching Brad Dourif get to talk to himself, and then the incredibly gory kill of poor Carlos that I did come to enjoy by that point.
He's a nice guy.
Based on one of Don's friends, evidently, who was a nurse.
I think all of the kills in this movie are gory in comparison to some that have come before.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, poor Carlos with his juicy fruit gum. Although when she's just like, oh, juicy fruit, I'm like, oh, so it sucks.
Yeah.
Right. The opinions of Michael Varrati do not represent that of the podcast.
No, it's not that. Just do they even make juicy fruit anymore?
I mean, I still remember the jingle, so I hope they do.
That's all that
I
matters.
can picture the yellow, the thing is that I like it, but it loses flavor very fast.
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in a mental hospital, you have nothing but time. You want like Big Red. You want flavor lasting gum.
Right. Get that fruit stripes out of here. But yeah, all the kills in this are fantastic. We mentioned the glass falling. Then there's the drill on the floor.
Well, like when they cut Carlos's stomach, his intestines just go flying out. They just could not wait to get out in the fresh air.
Right.
And I was thinking about how in the past 3 movies, at least, there's been at least one decapitation per movie. Tony Gardner in Seed, and then A. Martinez in Curse, and then Claire in this one. And I was trying to think how many there have been up to this point. And I think it really just kicks off in Seed. I don't think there's a lot of decapitations before then, but
Chucky found a new thing.
Not a complaint. I'm a fan of it. They do a good job with him.
And, Fiona Dourif is still fantastic in this. I feel like she gets to flex her muscles a little bit, particularly towards the end. And I, of course, love the idea of her playing her father, channeling Charles Lee Ray.
That's one of my favorite parts of this movie, because when they do her up like Charles Lee Ray, you can see her dad.
Yeah.
And you can tell that she is having the best time. Because what child ever gets the opportunity in that way to sort of portray their parents in both like a cool and mocking fashion?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. She said that she called her dad when she read that part of the script and just said, like, okay, give me the advice. What unlocks Chucky? Like, what will get me in there? He says, Chucky runs on 2 things. He's afraid of oblivion, and he absolutely loves his work. And then after that, that's all you need to know. And I'll sit at Brad Dourif's knees and like listen to him dispense advice forever. But I love that for sure. But yeah, she's so fun to watch at the end. And then you realize, of course, like, oh, he's jumped into her now. And then her and Tiffany becoming a couple to me is just absolutely adorable. And I definitely want to see their next film, especially with the Tiffany doll in the back.
She's like Sally Hardesty in the amount of just nonsense they put her through. This is someone who Chucky has killed her entire family. And then they make her think that she did it.
Right.
And they giving her electroshock therapy, all that stuff, just torturing her and going like, no, you actually killed your Oh, I guess I killed my family. That's too bad. And then it's happening again and no one's believing her. She's got a doctor that's sucking on her toes and not really helping her out too much. And then gets taken over by an evil doll.
Yeah. She's been through it. Yeah, maybe she does need to like be elevated on the final girl kind of Mount Rushmore here. Poor Andy. I enjoy his plot to get in to the asylum. He says, he just assaults a police officer after they won't let him in. They're like, all right, fine, you're in the cell. Poor guy doesn't make it out of the cell. Even though I do enjoy his method of mailing himself a gun and hiding it within the doll.
Yeah, he videodromes that doll. He just pulls a gun out of it.
The same gun as Videodrome as well.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
But yeah, especially for him to not realize that Chucky is in like multiple different dolls and people at that point, he thinks he just gets the drop on the one doll and then he gets locked in. So let's not forget his cliffhanger leaving this movie. Like Andy Barclay is now just in a mental hospital.
Real quick, I just love the scene of him being like, well, you know what will prove that Chuck is real? If I take this head and torture it in front of these people. Yeah. He's just shooting it with a nail gun. Right. And they're like, that's great, man. Please leave.
Nice work.
The one thing about Andy being locked up in the mental hospital there at the end is, he's locked in the room as Tiffany and Chucky drive off. But I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't even really know if the paperwork on this would hold. Like, the fact that he punches the security guard and they're just like, sure, we'll throw you in a cell. I'm like,
yeah.
Dubious. It worked out.
Right.
Well, that's that Canadian healthcare system. No good. It's terrible.
Right. And then, of course, at the end, we've got the return of another fan favorite, Kyle. Again, give me more of this soap opera. Like, keep bringing back the characters for me. Obviously, it was very successful for Andy Barclay, but now I want to know if Kyle's going to be in the series moving forward.
Well, it makes me think of if you've ever played any of those Metal Gear Solid games for the PlayStation, they would always end with like a phone call or like a radio communication that would reveal like, of course, we'll follow your plan, Mr. President. Yeah. That this time it's always just some character that comes back.
Yeah.
Right.
And if they kept doing that, I would not complain because I've loved it so far.
For sure. And her original hat that she wore when she was a kid, evidently.
I love that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. But yeah, man, I really dug this one just as much as I liked the previous one. And especially with the joining of Tiffany and Nika at the end. Now I just want to, that really, it felt like the last 20 minutes, like as you were saying at the beginning, like this, it's bringing back around some of that camp just a little bit more to let us not like, forget the darkness of the previous movie and a half. Like, I don't know where he would go necessarily in tone after this, but that's really interesting to me. Like, maybe not quite all the way to Seed.
Right.
Again, but like walking a nice line that these last two have done that I really enjoyed with the dark and the scary and the camp just kind of being perfect to get together with this one.
And I just love the final shots of that car driving off into the snow. It's such a great punctuation of at least this run of movies.
Yeah.
Because we know he's not done. And we know the television series does continue the story. But in a way, it's sort of like phases. And even though it's like Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, kind of a phase, Bride and Seed a phase, Curse and Cult a phase. But in a cumulative way, from Child's Play to Cult, you have sort of a complete package.
Yes.
That ends with Tiffany and Chucky driving off into that good night, or good guy night.
Good guy night. Yes. Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it is like, while it's triumphant for them, it's outside of their little car. It's bleak and desolate for everyone else that they've left behind in their path. And you're kind of left to reckon with that a little bit, but you're also still like, all right, now what's going to happen? What are these two going to get up to?
I want to see the Mickey and Mallory of them, on the road again together.
Yeah.
Well, let's honor our dead, please. Angela, played by Marina Stevenson Kerr. Wrists slit by wheelchair spoke. Claire, played by Grace Lynn Kung. Decapitated by falling glass. Madeline, played by Elizabeth Rosen. Spinal cord pulled out through mouth. Chucky arm shoved in mouth. Nurse Carlos, played by Zach Santiago. Stabbed to death by 3 Chuckies. Security guard, played by Darren Wall. Throat slit by Tiffany with nail file. Dr. Foley, played by Michael Varrati. Skull crushed by Nika while possessed by Chucky. Nurse Ashley, played by Ali Taratin, drilled in abdomen by Chucky. Malcolm, played by Adam Hertig, drilled through head by Chucky. So, Michael, are you a fan of the series as well? Because we're just now starting to dig into it ourselves. I have not watched it yet.
Yes, I am always tragically behind on television, so I will say what I have seen of the series I've enjoyed, but unlike some completists, I have not finished it. So I will make a plan to report back when I do. It may be a minute. But much like this conversation revealed, I think more of this universe is never a bad thing.
Agreed. Yeah, and part of the thesis of this show is just like if we're in the world, we're just going to keep going. We're going to dissect every bit of it. So we were a little bit unsure if we were going to commit the time to 3 seasons of a television show, but I've been so wrapped up in the story and just knowing that it perpetually goes forward, I got to keep going now at this point.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to dive into that after we do the remake, of course. So knowing that it was just announced that there's going to be a new theatrical Child's Play movie, you as a fan, where would you want this series to go next?
Well, I would love to see Chucky and Tiffany and their child reunited. I am curious to see just sort of in this wild reunion of those who have survived and what was left of them. I would like to see Kyle and Andy and Fiona. I would love to see them all back. And I think that that's it. I think it's now a thing where we know where Chucky goes, mayhem and murder follow. But if you've been part of this franchise as a fan for as long as many of us have, it's almost like coming home to see everybody as well. So,
and do you have a favorite? Did you say Seed was your favorite?
No, Bride is probably my favorite. That being said, I do really like Seed. I think that Seed of all of the movies is the one that gets the hardest knocks. But I think it's the movie that if it did not exist, a lot of the things that we now like about the franchise as a whole would not be allowed. It was the movie that like pushed the envelope so far that in returning, it made fans who wanted the more just kind of pure horror happy. But everybody who's always known that Chucky is a push the limits wackiness kind of franchise, we now know the extent at which the wackiness can be. And I think that's really great.
Right, for sure. I hope that there's at least 1 or 2 episodes of the TV show that go that full wacky, because that would be a great opportunity to like kind of dip in and out of that too. Keeping a somewhat consistent tone, but TV shows, you can have an episode that is a little bit more pushed in that direction. I'm really hoping that we get to see Glenn or Glenda come back in the TV show at some point. Any last thoughts before we get out of here? I want to hear if you have anything to plug, Michael, coming up.
Yes. Well, as listeners may or may not know, every other Wednesday at midnight, I do co-host Midnight Mass, a show all about cult movies that I do with my dear friend and drag icon Peaches Christ. Not only is Midnight Mass a routine thing for us on the airwaves, but we're about to hit the road. We are taking Midnight Mass on the road for a tour. We're doing a rolling roadshow tour where we are doing Sleepaway Camp, the live experience. And joining us on the road is Felissa Rose. And so we are currently slated to do 8 cities, and we're adding more right now. And it's very exciting because Peaches and I both kind of come from a world of celebrating our favorite movies in different ways. Peaches definitely has a very, very long history of doing these raucous live shows, and I've hosted many a movie. And we felt like with Midnight Mass as an experience, it made sense for us to take what we do on the show and bring that worship of cinema to the people. So we've got sort of a raucous stage show that will presuppose the film, and Felissa will join us on stage for a conversation, and there's going to be all sorts of nonsense. I will be back to write, direct, and produce the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards this year. I cannot tell you when they're going to air. I know, but they won't let me. But I would say look around Halloween.
Yes.
And just multiple other bits of craziness. As we mentioned, Dead Mall is potentially on the way. I have a few other projects coming as well. The only other thing that I can think might be of interest immediately that I can talk about, I co-wrote a movie with Chris LaMartina, who horror fans might know is the writer behind the WNUF Halloween special.
Oh, yeah.
Chris and I have known each other for many, many, many years. We first met at the Cinema Wasteland Horror Convention in Cleveland, Ohio, probably close to 20 years ago. And we've just kept up. And a couple years ago, Chris called and said, hey, I've this crazy idea. I want to make a feature film for my 40th birthday. And the conceit, because Chris loves a gimmick. If you've seen WNUF, you know that yes. Chris loves a gimmick. He was like, I want to do a 4-day feature, 4 for 40. Can it be done? And would you write it with me? And we did. And it's
Nice work.
finished and it's forthcoming. And I believe it should be out this fall. So
fantastic.
It's called Spirit Tasting. Keep your eyes open. And if you do happen to see it somewhere, happy birthday, Chris LaMartina.
Nice. Yes. Is the Traveling Roadshow, is it by any chance coming up to Portland, Oregon, where we are at?
Yes, we are going to be in Portland on June 26th at the Clinton Street Theater.
Nice.
Great.
And that is our third date on the tour. We're actually kicking off in the Pacific Northwest. We're starting in Seattle, going to Olympia, and then down to Portland. So I'm very excited. I love Portland. In fact, I was there recently when There's a Zombie Outside was on the festival circuit, the feature film that I wrote and directed. We played at the Clinton Street Theater as well.
Oh, great.
So it's a venue I have a great affinity for.
I would like to plug your movie as well, because I watched There's a Zombie Outside yesterday and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was not the movie I thought it was going to be, and I enjoyed both of them. Everyone should check that out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. In fact, that's one of those things about that movie. When I wrote it, I knew that I was making a movie of misdirection. And I have said from the very beginning that it is one of those films where it's either going to work for the viewer or it's not. And both of those viewers are correct. Like, it's just like what you're willing to go along for. It was born out of multiple things, but one of them was just sort of like, can I make a movie where the movie is the monster? Mm-hmm. And it means a lot that you checked it out. So I appreciate that. Yeah,
it was great. I would love to pick your brain about it some more sometime.
I would be very happy to do so. So thank you.
Well, yeah, we will definitely be catching you at the Clinton Street when you come up to Portland, Oregon, for sure. We'll have to go across the street to our favorite place near there, Dots, afterwards for a drink. Yes,
I went to Dots while I was there for the film festival many times.
Yes,
great food, probably 2 good drinks.
Yes. Yep. Well, one will be on us if we see you there. Well, not too many before your show, of course. Not to end on a downer, but I feel like we would be a little bit remiss considering you're doing the Sleepaway Camp Roadshow, that we're recording this on the day that it was announced that Jonathan Tiersten passed away. Did you know him at all?
Yeah, I did. In fact, Jonathan and I worked together a number of years ago. I wrote a project that Jonathan starred in, and he was very sweet. In fact, from that time working together, we stayed in touch intermittently. I won't say that we saw each other often, because Jonathan, as anyone who knew him, had a penchant to kind of disappear. He would do this thing where he would be very active, and then he would like kind of fall off the grid for a while, and then he would pop back up with like a very lovely thing to say. It was always very, very Jonathan. It was very sad. It was very shocking news to hear. I always just, think of him and his enthusiasm for the project we did together. But also, he was a great music artist. There were several nights where I would meet up with him to see his band play when he would be here in Los Angeles, or we would catch up. And a story I don't think I've ever told anywhere. My parents, when I first moved to Los Angeles, they were visiting one of their initial times. I had been here for about a year or so, and I had already worked with Jonathan at that point. And we were out at Venice Beach, and Venice is exactly what you think it is based on movies. It's stuck in the 80s. That's why people like to go there. But it's also not a place that when you live in LA, depending where you live in the city, you go to often. So I was taking my parents to go see the beach, and there was a cafe on the beach that surprisingly was very underpopulated for the time of day and year that we were at. And I was eating with my mom and dad, and who walks by the cafe but Jonathan, and he sees us, and he's like, "Oh my God, Michael Varrati." And he just came and sat down and started talking to my parents as if he had known them his entire life.
Oh.
And he just like blah, 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 blah. And for years, my mom would be like, "Remember that guy that just came and started talking to us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's Ricky from Sleepaway Camp." But no, he was very sweet, and it's very sad news.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jonathan, we salute you, and I think the best way we can go out is by saying, "Eat shit and live," as well as we can. But Michael, thank you so much for joining us on our show, for talking about Chucky, for talking about everything you've got coming up. We're going to be watching the Chainsaw Awards, we're going to be looking out for Dead Mall, of course, and come back whenever you want. I guess the last question, I meant to ask this earlier. What is your favorite franchise? And do you have a specific entry point in there?
Oh my gosh. What is my favorite franchise? It's tough. I think it's a tough question. I have franchises that I have great affinity for. The most significant one in my life would actually be an outlier because it was the movie that got me into horror movies. But when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, which I saw on USA Up All Night when Rhonda hosted Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
All night.
And Return of the Killer Tomatoes. And I really, really love those movies, and I kind of blame them for getting me into all of this. But the franchise that is most perennial in my life is actually the Friday the 13th franchise.
Right.
I see at least one or two of those movies every year. And then just by sheer virtue of this weird life that I live, I have worked with more Friday the 13th alumni than anyone else. And inadvertently, like sometimes things will happen where I write a project for somebody else because both as a working director, I'm also a working screenwriter, and I write many movies for other people. And I will do like a TV movie or I'll do a project and they'll like send me, here's who we cast. And like, it's Russell Todd from Friday the 13th Part 2. And it's just like, but really of all the actors, someone like so consistently, Camp Crystal Lake always comes back to me in some way. And so I have a bit of, not just a bit, I have a great affinity for especially those first 8 films.
Right.
Yeah. So
perfect.
I guess it would have to be that.
Nice.
That'll work. I would say we'd invite you on to discuss that, but we did that right out the gate several years ago. But
makes sense. There are good ones to start with.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So, all right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for listening. That'll do it for our primary run on Chucky. We do have the remake, so stick with us for the remake. Fire that one up, and we'll be back to talk about that one in the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, you can email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram at thismayhurtabitpod. And we will see you in a couple of weeks for the Chucky remake, Child's Play 2019. Good night.
Good night.
This has been a Caretaker Press production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thismayhurtabitpod and email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. Give us a 5-star review over on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.